Did you know that you can add custom commands to your model-driven app? This opens a world of possibilities when you're developing an app. Hi, I'm Bruno and welcome to the Power Minutes. Today's video is a complex one, as we are going to use a few different technologies while trying to stay as low code as possible. So let's actually start by explaining our scenario, the goals, and the process before we begin. We've got a simple app where we list colors and shapes. Each shape has a color, and we need to inform the manager what shapes are using a specific color. For the most part, it seems like a simple job with relationships, a subgrid here and there, and we can have a list of shapes within each color that then we can just extract via Excel, for example, and send it via email. Now that should take less than 5 minutes, but in a real life scenario, that's 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, over there, and that can add to a lot of time consumed for something that could be streamlined. Plus, if you're doing this manually, there's always room for mistakes and you send the wrong reference sheet to the wrong manager or for the wrong product. So, how can we streamline this for a user? Well, there's no cleaner way to being able to do our task with just a click of a button. Or, if you want to be accurate with the naming, a command. In a model-driven app, we've got a ribbon full of commands. You might have seen it: the create, the delete, the deactivate, and so on, that we can click to perform a series of different actions. And we're going to create our own. Previously, we had to use tools to modify our ribbons, but fortunately today we can edit your command bars directly from the Power Platform portal. So that's one tool for one challenge. Now we got to make sure that there are some protection against accidental clicks. For that, we're going to create a confirmation pop-up using a custom page and a JavaScript. Yes, we're leveraging a little bit of Pro code. You'll see it's not a lot, but those two technologies together will be able to create that dialog/pop-up view that you will have as an insurance policy. And finally, we'll use Power Automate Flow to capture all the necessary information and send it via email. Great! Now that we've got all our requirements aligned, let's start building. Given that our case is actually full of dependencies between each feature, I'll actually develop our process backwards. Meaning, I will first show you how I build the last step of the process, the Power Automate Flow. So let's get there. And you can see over here that this flow will be invoked by a custom page. So a Canvas app trigger will be used, and here we will pass the color GUID as an input parameter. We listed the related shapes using a list row step and a fetch.xml query on the colors. So over here we get that fetch.xml and we get the related entity color to create a shape linked to color to get the shape's name. This minimizes the amount of steps we need to do to get the related shapes. Then those records will be grouped up in an HTML table, which then will be prettied up in our compose step to add some CSS, making it a bit more fancy. And last but not least, over here we send it to our manager. For the sake of our demo, that will be me. Then, of course, I said last step, but realistically, the last step we have to perform is notify the Canvas app, or in this case, the custom page, that the step was completed successfully. Now that we went through our flow, let's actually see how the custom page invokes it and what does it do relating to the other tools that we are going to use. So let's go there, and you can see that our custom page is relatively simple. It's just a page with two buttons, one for cancel, which will, if you check the code, literally just go back. This is how we will close the pop-up with the help of the JavaScript. And of course, we have a notify button which will launch a pop-up. We have a pop-up here with a loading spinner. You'll see it in play, and it will launch the flow that we just saw with a few parameters here. Also including the recorded item name. I forgot to mention that. Then, of course, based on the flow run, it will say it's completed, and it will then trigger it. Then, how do we get all of that information over here? Well, that's why we have the onStart logic, and you'll see that on the onStart we're setting up all of our variables. The key value here, like we're defaulting the pop-up to false, make sure it's at least enabled and also not visible. Same with the flow run status, all set to blank, but you see the var record item. That one is a little bit more complex, as we are sending it with a parameter record ID. Now, where does that come from? Well, it comes from our JavaScript. So now that we have a good overview of how the flow is being launched, let's see how it's actually invoked. And for that, we need to see our JavaScript, which I've prepared over here. So in order to make that pop-up behave like a pop-up, we needed to create this function in JavaScript. Fortunately, you can find some more documentation on Microsoft Learn. We hopefully also have some references in our comment section or video description down below. And what we'll be using here is a function called open custom page dialog, which will have three parameters: the primary control, the first selected item ID, and selected entity type name. This will be used for either debugging or to ensure that the script actually works. So we have a small step over here, record ID clean, to ensure that our GUID is cleaned up for use on the other tools of our platform. So we're removing a few special characters. And then we have also the page input and navigation options. Now these two variables will inform the tool that we're building, the command that we're building, how we want our custom page to show. So we already made a reference. Make sure that you put the custom page internal name reference over here, and then we're passing the entity name as well as the record ID. Remember that on the previous step, that's how we're gonna pass the parameter. For the navigation options, it's important that you put target as 2. This will make it as a dialog box. And then you have your standard positions, heights, and widths. And we also decided to put a nice little title on our page. With then the XRM navigation, we'll pass the parameters that will launch the dialog box, and an additional bit of code will ensure that once the page is closed, we also refresh the overall form. Now, save that script and import it into your solution. So to import it into your solution, let's go back. You can go into your solution. In case you don't know, it's a web resource. So we can either add as new, go more, web resource, and upload it over here by choosing a file. Do not put a language in there. That's not for JavaScript. That's for actual, human languages, not programming languages, but leave that to none. Once you have your form over here, you should be ready to go. In case you need to modify your form, you can always update the form. Sorry, not the form. You can always update your JavaScript by updating either the code over here or re-uploading that file and pressing save. But after you do that, make sure you press publish. Right? Without a publish, your code might not take shape and change accordingly. Or if it does, it can take too long of a time for it to be debuggable. But that's too many details right now. And I know we're almost there. I promise we just have one major step to complete. And that is getting our app ready for the new command. So we are on our app in edit mode. And we want to check which shapes are in colors. So let's see our colors view. Let's click on the ellipses right here and press edit command bar. I prefer to edit in a new tab. You can always open it. And for our example, we're going to be working on the main form. You can always do the main grid, the subview, or the associated views. But remember that requires some additional code to be updated, because you can, in theory, have multi-slides in there. We're just going to do an example with the main form because it's the simplest one. So it will take a little bit to load. And we want to edit here Okay, you can see all the buttons that you already got, the commands here, and you may see that I already have our button Notify Manager. Let's see how we've set it up. So we decided to use a standard icon from the existing list of icons that Microsoft provides. So we didn't go creative there. And for actions, we are running JavaScript. Yes, you can run PowerFX formulas, but for this particular feature, we don't have a PowerFX equivalent just yet. Then you want to add a library. If it's your first time, you want to click on that pencil and search for the web resource we just added on the previous step. Then below, let me just remove the code real quick, you can see it asks for your function name. If you don't know what that is, the function name is here. You can see it right at the start, function open custom page dialog. So you want to paste that open custom page dialog onto your dialog box over here and then add the 3 parameters. These need to be in order. First, primary control, then first selected item ID, and finally selected entity type name, because that's how we set it up in our function. If you set it differently, follow what you put on your parameters over here. Then you want to save and publish. Right, we're almost there. Now time for an actual test. Let me load the app. Let's put it in play mode and let's just see how it goes. Let's give it a time to load and we'll be back once it loads. And we're back. It took a little bit longer to load. Sometimes that happens. So as a recap, we have the following shapes, a few shapes, and we want to go to colors. Now notice that in this case, we got 2 examples for color blue. So under colors, let's go blue. Yep, we got a circle and a triangle. Let's notify the manager. You can see our pop-up, in this case technically a dialog box, but a lot of people just like to call it a pop-up. You'll see that it showed up. So if you made a mistake, you can press cancel and the flow will not run. But if you press notify manager and you indeed want to notify it, you press the notify. As you can see, it's a loading spinner, it refreshes, and I already heard on my side, you can see that I just got a brand new email. So you can see that's the date down to the minute. I did not prepare anything beforehand, and you can see that hello, we'd like you that to notify you that the following shapes are being used for the color blue: circle and triangle. So there you have it, circle and triangle. Now you're ready to add custom actions and notifications in your model-driven apps. This opens a world of possibilities in your development. So see you next time.